many people are always asking, yeah, but what if you lose your papers? Then it's gone forever. I would actually say the opposite, because in the digital world, it's so easy to make a folder or a category that you forget about because it's not in your face. You have to pull it out to get it. Welcome to Experimental Encounters, where we share our journey towards less friction and more freedom. We explore the sweet spot between ancient wisdom, productivity, psychology, and technology. First, we'll share our latest encounters, and then we will move on to our main topic, which is the use of index cards for GTD task management. We are your hosts, Torbjørn and Kenneth. Let the experimentation begin. So, Kenneth, what have you been up to since last time?
Yes, what I've been up to, quite a lot. I did some editing of the latest podcast, which was a lot of fun, but also made me very self-conscious about all my ums and hums. And I also got to learn finally the editing software called DaVinci Resolve, which is a pro editing software. And it has a lot of very unique and time-saving features. So I got to play with how to just learning the software, setting up a profile in my Stream Deck, so it's easier to edit, and and I also made a new script in AutoHotkey, which allows me to see through windows. I can just click Shift button and scroll the mouse wheel, and then I can immediately see behind the current window. So if I'm waiting for a chat or something, instead of having it always behind, when I remember, I can just make the current window transparent and untransparent again. And I've actually been using that quite a lot. Yeah. And also made a new AutoHotkey script, which always makes sure that the Teams window is on top whenever I need to send a command to Teams, because sometimes you will want to raise your hand or you want to share your screen, and this is fine in the Stream Deck. But if the Teams window is not active, nothing happens, because you're sending the command maybe to your PowerPoint presentation. So I made a script that always, first, before you send the command to the Teams window, make sure that the Teams window is in focus. And the other way around, before I press next to show me the next slide in the presentation, I always make sure that, what the script does, makes sure that the PowerPoint presentation is in focus, and that makes the presentation go on to the next slide or pause this presentation or whatever. So that's my latest encounters, and I feel they have been of much use to me in my daily work life. So
very nice.
Mm-hmm. And you, Torbjørn?
Yeah, after our last episode where we talked about keyboards and shortcuts and stuff like that, and how to alter the default, I somehow forgot that to mention that I have done one hack to my keyboard, and that is to change the behavior for two buttons, and that is the backspace and the caps lock. So now the backspace is at my left little finger instead of my right little finger, which is farther up. And I've been doing that for the last 6 months, and it took me almost no time to get used to. Of course, when I go to another person's keyboard, it's always a problem. But I've had a lot of benefits from doing that, because the caps lock is just to the right of the A key, and that is it's a very little key travel instead of the backspace position. And another thing about the default is that we've been living in our big house for almost 5 years now, but it was just like 3 months ago we decided to remove a kitchen door that was always in the way, because it was never closed, and when it was open we had to move it, and it was hard to get around. So one day my girlfriend just suggested, why don't we just take the door off? And of course we've been it's been very nice since then. So sometimes it's nice to take a fresh look at things.
Yes.
So my latest encounter since last time is I'm considering buying a mechanical keyboard. One more. I have one right now, which is very it's very loud, and I think I'm disturbing my colleagues with the sound of the keyboard, because it has the cherry blue switches. It's a clicky keyboard, and I cannot change the switches without soldering new switches in. So I'm considering buying a hot swappable mechanical keyboard, and right now I'm finding out what kind of switch do I want to put in my new keyboard. And it's a complete jungle and a very big rabbit hole to go into the switch world.
Oh yes. So I have a keyboard like this, and when you find a switch that is silent, please let me know, because I think I'm also driving my colleagues crazy, especially in Teams meetings and so on, because they very often someone asks who's writing, and it's usually me, because I always try to write down whatever I need to remember. So but another thing, you also said you had changed your caps lock to your change your caps lock so that it's now a backspace key, and I also have done that. But first I tried to do this in AutoHotkey, but AutoHotkey it's not close enough to the machine layer in Windows. So that means that sometimes, and in the beginning, I may click on caps lock and then I turn the caps lock on, and then for the rest of the time it's just the backspace key and I can't turn the caps lock off. And that's very, very annoying. So I found another solution to it, which is using something called Microsoft Power Toys. I don't know if that's what you're using, or
no. I used another open source application to change the behavior of the keyboard. It's a Windows application, something I don't remember what it was.
No.
But there is a software, free software to where you can make your own keyboard maps. But most of them you can only switch the letters around. So you have to have an application that can also switch these modifier keys like caps lock.
Before Torstein goes into his main topic about GTD on index cards, I just wanted to give a short overview of the method itself. So this podcast is about less friction and more freedom, and no other system has, for me, made such a difference in these two areas, both professionally and in my private life. So here is a short introduction to GTD. There are 5 discrete steps to the GTD method. They are capture, clarify, organize, review or reflect, and engage. First, we have capture. That means gather all your tasks and ideas into one place. Of course, they won't come from just one place. They will come from all over the place. You have to be diligent about capturing it all, and in the end, placing them all in one system. Here are just some few examples of where all these things can show up in your daily life. So for me, it's often in my phone. Call logs often reminds me of things I have to do, messages and so on. Email, of course, is like a never-ending input stream. Regular mail, bills to pay, receipts and newsletters and so on. Receipts for everything I buy. Maybe I need to keep a receipt in case something breaks and I need to return something which is inside of the warranty time. Then you have clarify. With clarify, we mean that you look at each single item and you ask yourself, what does this mean? What does done look like? And you have to find the very next action that you can do in one sitting where you have all you need. So let me show you how this can look. So this is your brain, and stuff constantly comes into your brain. But with GTD, you can actually make sense of all these things. So we try and clarify what these things are. The first thing is you look at one thing at a time. So first we take one thought and then we ask, okay, what is this? And then we ask, is this actionable? Is it something I can do something about? If it's no, there's really just three things you can do with it. It's either you can incubate it, that means put it aside for a later time to decide, so you will probably add it to your calendar or someday maybe list or something. Or you could archive it. It's just information you need to have at hand in case something happens. Or the most frequently used, for me at least, it's trash. Just throw it away. You don't need it anymore. But if it is actionable, what is the very next action? If it's really urgent or if it's really easy to do, you can just do it straight away. Or if someone else is better suited to do this, then you can delegate it. You can also delegate it to yourself in the future, and that's the next thing. You have to postpone doing this thing, because you can't do everything at once, and especially not when you are looking through all the things you have captured. Maybe you just need to get to the bottom of the pile or bottom of the list, and then you can go back to it. But as I said, if it takes less than 2 minutes, just do it anyway, because it'll take longer to write it down, keep it in your system, look at it maybe once a week, and then decide if you should do it again. If it's a very short task, do it straight away. To summarize, if you can do something with it, find the very next action where you have all you need that you can complete in one sitting. Then you have to ask yourself, when I have done this very next action, am I then done, or is there more to be done? So in other words, is there a project here? So the beauty of this is that you just need one list of all the things you want to get completed, and then you have to add at least one next action for each of the things on your project list. If you don't have a next action for each project, then you have to add one. So let's just take an example. So here's your project list, and your projects are Dave's birthday, it's a trip to Spain, and it's the launch of a new car in your business. So the first thing is some shopping for the birthday. I need to buy both balloons and champagne. And maybe the next thing is, for the trip to Spain, I need to ask Tom about the tickets. And I also need to pack for the trip to Spain. And maybe the next thing is, at your office, you need to write a press release. So here you can see how these 3 different projects spread out to 4 different context lists: your shopping list, your calls list, your home list, and your office list. And this makes it easier for you to make your projects move forward, as long as you have the different lists to look at in your different contexts. The next step is organize. The main way to think about this is batching. Try to keep similar items together. So think of it as a deck of cards. When it's all shuffled and everything is random, you can't really make sense, you can't really find things very quickly. But if you put all the cards together and sort them in the logical order, you can easily find the different cards you need. And this means less switching and therefore less mental load for you. So if there's something you must buy, add it to your shopping list. If there's something you need to follow up with someone on, add it to your waiting for list. If you need to tidy your car, add it to your garden or outdoors list. And all this batching means less switching, which means less mental load for my part. The next step is reflect. Unless we regularly review our external system, our brains will try to take back control. That's why it's crucial to review all your projects, calendars, and context lists weekly. Only then will your brain actually relax and trust your system. Until you do this, you will constantly be reminded by your brain that, oh, maybe I've forgotten this, maybe I've forgotten this. And that's not a good way to spend your hard-earned willpower every day. Then we have the engage phase, and it's very easy. You just use the system you have already made. So every day, just start the day by looking at your calendar. When you have looked at your calendar, you know how much time you have. Then where are you? What's the context? Are you at the store? Are you at your office? Are you at home? Look at your context lists, and only then you can look at the list and decide, okay, what do I feel like doing? Yes, that's my short introduction to GTD. If you want to have a more deeper dive, we highly recommend the Vital Learnings GTD podcast, which episodes 1 to 6 go through all these steps. Point 1 is about why you should learn GTD, and the episodes 2 to 6 are about these 5 steps. So it's highly recommended, and we'll add links to the podcast in our show notes. Now, over to you, Torbjørn.
So, some time ago, I was I started to capture with my I have a capture wallet. Let me show that first. And this is a small leather book I have in my pocket. It's a folio for a small moleskin, but I don't have a book inside. I just have my some credit cards, and then I have a stack of index cards here. So that was where the whole thing started about what I'm about to show you, because I grew very fond of these index cards. And one day the idea struck me, what if I put everything on index cards? What would that look like in a system? And that is what I'm about to share now.
Yeah, and for those who are only listening, we will highly recommend that you take a look at the video version on YouTube. So,
and I will try to tell as much as possible when I'm going through. So today's topic is from inbox to slipbox, and that is a little wordplay I will get back to. It's mainly about the application of the task management part of GTD, and I'm using atomic paper-based index cards. So this is my first iteration of a small box containing my index cards, and it's just a shoebox, and I glued on some notes to make it pretty. I've always tended to move towards natural things. This is a girl running barefoot, and I'm also running barefoot almost, but with shoes without shock absorbent. I'm trying to do things as naturally as possible, and I thought that the index card was also going to be like some kind of natural approach without any software or some kind of idea that people wanted to sell me. And I also needed a place to focus. And again, our friend Kompernolle from Brain Chains is stating that your success depends on your intellectual productivity and above all, your ability to reflect. And as we all know, our screens and our ICTs are distracting our focus. So this was also an experiment on how could I regain some of that focus by taking my eyes off the screen. So a little bit about the journey. This was the beginning of the journey with a small spiral notebook. I just tore out the page and put it on the left side here, and it worked very fine. But I wanted something more sturdy. So what I did, I found some blank index card, which is they're more sturdy, and I started to use them, and then I would erase them and use a pencil. And then I thought this is a nice idea. I want to find something with the lines on. So I bought, I upgraded to index cards with lines on, and they have one line at the, you can see it here. The one side, it's the line is in the one direction, and then the other side, it's on the other direction. So you can choose or use both sides. So like these ballerinas, all my index cards, they look the same, but they are in my system, they will conduct a symphony and a dance, and they will all have their own small things to do in the bigger setup. A little bit about the tools. I've talked a little bit about it. I use a Stedler Mars Technical with a 2mm graphite. I use the leather cover for my moleskin pocketbook, and then I use these index cards, and they're from manufacturing. We can put a link to the store in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
And then some kind of box for my index cards. And then also I used a label writer to make some of the labels, and I will get back to that.
Yeah.
So here's the box, and I think it will open now. This was my first prototype, and it worked very well. So after like some weeks, I thought, well, I might want to build something that is better and more aesthetically pleasing. So this is my current setup. I have some green felt in the bottom, and I've typeset all the letters, or all the indexes. And now I will just go through the different sections of these two stacks, because there is a system to it. In the front left, I have my inbox, so all the cards from my small book will go inside that stack if I didn't process it already. Behind that, I will have different tabs for next actions. And behind my next actions, I will have tabs for projects, and they were divided in active projects and on hold projects. And behind that, I had a Sunday section, and I also had some sections for different checklists, and I will come back to that as well.
Yep.
In the front right, I had a big stack of blanks, because I just have to reach out to this box to get a new blank page to write on. It has to be easy to capture. Behind the blanks, I have a full tickler system with 31 days and 12 months. And when this picture was taken, I was about to delegate some projects, so they just went back there. It was just a preparation. So it's like a box with 2 rows of index cards. And later I added a stack with the use cards to erase. In the beginning, I erased the cards as I used them. Yeah. But I also experimented with saving them for the weekly review, because then I counted how many actions I had done and how many projects I had done during the last week. And I also divided all my projects into 3 stacks: projects where I had a next action on it, projects that was where I was waiting for someone else, and projects where there was I don't know the last category, but I had 3 categories of projects, so I could always see the distribution of types of projects, and that helped me to see, okay, about a third of my projects is in a waiting status, and about a third of them is like where I have the next action.
Because you like to erase them. I also tried erasing them, but it didn't. It seems to give you more satisfaction than it gave me. So
yeah.
So I usually what I ended up doing was I archived them. So whenever I finished a separate task, like a next action, I just put it into the archive. And then each weekly review, I went through my archive, and if that also meant that the project itself got archived, then I pinched them together with a paperclip, and moved them into completed projects. And then I could see, because I also wrote the date I completed each task, so I could have like a very good log of when I did stuff and when it was completed. And whenever people ask, I didn't know, when did you say this to me, and how should I know, and this is many months ago, and you can't possibly have done this. And I could just find the project, find the card, and say I did this on that and that day, and I could see it in my email, and I had sent them a message, for instance.
Yeah, for me, the erasing was just like, now it's a clean slate, and there was a zen moment of completion as well, a small win, and just just having a moment each week where I spend 10 minutes erasing to give my archive brain some space as well. So where does this inspiration come from? Well, first of all, I read the book How to Take Smart Notes, and got into all this Zettelkasten methodology about, you know, linking your stuff together with small atomic notes. And it was one of the guys was this guy Niklas Luhmann. There was also other guys using this system, but he was quite productive. So inspired by his paper-based notes, I don't know if maybe it was 90,000 notes he had when he died. I thought, well, if he could manage 90,000 notes, I would also be able to manage about 500 notes in a small box, and see how that went. So this was like the idea. So why do I do it? Well, I thought it was excited, and I was also a little bit afraid to put all my stuff on small pieces of paper. But in the beginning of my journey, GTD journey, I started out on paper, and I always wanted to go back to paper as well, because I think it's a very nice way to engage with your stuff. I was also a little bit repelled by lists because I tend to have long lists and there was too much info on them. I was attracted to the cards because they have like a single focus. You can take one card out and focus on just one card. And also I love, as we both do, to experiment and test out new ideas and concepts. And then also my system that far didn't feel just right yet. So I got this idea. This is I've also been doing calligraphy. So I love to write things down, and this is one of my early to-do lists on the PC context. So I took this and I just said, well, we have Miller's law as well, which is 7 items plus minus 2. And if you see on the left here, there's definitely more than 7 items, and there's a lot going on this piece of paper. So I thought, well, can I do it more simple? 1 card per item. That was the main idea.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to underestimate how powerful this idea is actually, because there's something about how you can focus so much more with just this 1 card on each, with just 1 item on each card.
Yeah,
it's actually quite revolutionizing for me, at least.
So I thought it would be fun to look at the properties of a physical card. So first, the physical properties. First of all, it's simple. There's no learning curve. You have 1 item per card. Second, it's scalable. You have 1 core component. It's a versatile building block. It reduces cognitive load when you only have to relate to 1 concept. I don't have to relate to 5 different apps to manage my system. This is just 1 card, 1 concept. It's also portable because at least part of my stack fits in my pocket, and it's always on. I don't have to turn it on by logging in with my fingerprint or something else like that, and it doesn't go out of power. And it's also sustainable. It's paper, and I reuse it and erase it. So one card can be used many times. And then I think it's a high quality tactile experience as well, because these cards just have the right amount of friction when you write on them with a pencil. And when you engage and invest a lot of time in your tool, the quality and the feel becomes very important for the overall experience. So it was important for me to have good paper to write on instead of this spiral book with thin paper.
Yeah.
And some of the mental benefits or the inside of the card, I think it's a very nice substitute for your mental RAM. It will support your focus due to the atomic feature. You don't have to relate to so much at a time. And it also supports perspective, because you can take a stack of cards and you can put them out in front of you and look at them. You can either put them under each other or in a matrix or whatever you like. So there's very high versatility. And it's easy to, when you put things out, to spot the holes in the cheese regarding your projects and next actions.
Yeah. The last thing there is one of the key components for me, because it's one of the techniques that maybe made the weekly review for me easier. In a way that many other techniques or approaches really haven't done before I tried it like this.
Yeah. So we can say that this index cards is a perfect bridge between the physical world and our brain, or at least an elegant bridge, I think, because it will combine these external and internal properties. For me, it elevated my task management to a very physical and a very relatable entity, because lots of times our ideas are fluffy and not physical. Yeah. So the chance to relate to your ideas as a physical thing is a very, for me, it was a very nice experience.
Yeah.
And it also allows us to engage both associatively and sequentially, almost at the same time. I'm a balanced thinker. When we are on the Kairos cognition survey, maybe we could put a link to that as well.
Yeah.
So my brain needs to shift between those two states of sequential and associatively, and the index cards are supporting that as well. So next, I would like to look at how the index card relates to other kind of notes in the physical and the digital world. So I made up the matrix of notes, and on the vertical axis we have digital notes at the top and analog notes at the bottom. On the horizontal axis we have stellar notes at the left and atomic notes on the right. And here stellar notes meaning one node containing a lot of information, and atomic node containing a little information. So usually in the old days we had a list with a lot of things on. It's an analog list. It has a lot of information. Yeah. And then came the digital age, and we started to use note tools like Apple Notes, Evernote, OneNote, like that. And then came the linking and atomic notes apps, which could be like Notion, Obsidian, or Logseq, or something like that. And then we have the last quadrant of notes where the index card is completing the circle, because we have an atomic note which is also analog. So that was an area I hadn't tried out that yet. So that was also one of my reasons to try this. Was I needed to figure out how does it feel like to work in this area of the note universe. And in the bottom left, or in the left section of this diagram, you have single nodes which do not relate that much to each other. And on the right-hand side of this diagram, you have a linking feature, because I also linked my index cards together with each other.
Yeah.
So for the capture, I have my wallets. I actually have 4 different spaces to put my cards in. The first stack here is my blanks. And then I have my inbox at the bottom left. And then I have a stack of cards to erase, which is cards that are used. I don't have any next action on it, or I don't have to process it. And then I had a out and about context. I could just take one context out of my stack. If I was in a certain context, I could take that stack out and take it with me in my pocket. Then there's a project card, and I will go through the sections here. First of all, I have a title of the project in the top section, and in the top right corner, I have the project number. I'm almost since day one, I've been numbering my projects sequentially, because it's easier for me to relate to in my different reference systems.
Yeah.
And it's not something that the GTD methodology addresses either to do or not to do. It has just felt right for me to have a number before my title.
Yeah.
Underneath the number, I have some. There's also additional information. This is like metadata on the project, and it's not like project support, but it's just quick reference for relevant information.
Yeah.
Underneath the project number, I have the reference material. Here it says P and M, where P stands for paper or physical, and M is for mail. So this tells me that I have stuff in paper and I have stuff in my mail system. And as an example, my mail will mirror both the title and the number. Mm-hmm. I can find everything wherever I look. It's called the same. Yeah. So it's very important to have consistency in your system to make this work. But when you make it work, it's easy to navigate between paper material and different digital reference systems. Then we have the next action cards. Again, in the top, I have the description of the next action. At the top right corner, instead of the project number as a top thing, I have the context for that one, and I always use 2 or 3 letter abbreviations for my different context. I don't have that many, but they are also they're easy to remember. So this is a PC context, and under that I have the project number. So there we have the link to the project. Yeah. I can also do like more references directly on the next action card if that is relevant for me. And here I have a D and a P, which tells me I have digital files and paper files. Yeah. Then I have a waiting card. First of all, who am I waiting on and what am I waiting on? That is the main text on this card. At the top right corner, I've written the WTN, which is my abbreviation for waiting context. Under that, I have the date where I started waiting, and then lastly, the project number link as well. Yeah, I think WTN is a better abbreviation than WF because it could be misunderstood if someone else sees your system. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then I also experimented with a checklist stack. So instead of having one list with a lot of items on it, I divided the checklists up so that you have a stack of cards representing a list. And here the example, of course, is the weekly review with 11 cards with 1 card for each step. And I can have the cards in front of me and I can just take the front card and put it on the back when I'm done with that. And then I have step 2, what do I have to do right now? So this is a very strict way of trying to focus on one step at a time. Yeah, and I actually think this, I use this for packing our kids' stuff in the mornings. I just had a stack of cards and I just cycled through until I was at the beginning again, and then I knew I had done everything, packed all the lunch boxes and all the gym bags and whatever they needed. So yeah. So speaking about the weekly review, so I did a card game each week, a solitaire game, where I placed all my project cards on the table. And here you see one of my early adoptions. So in the left hand, this is all active projects, and the right hand is like projects on hold. Yep. So now the game is to lay out all the projects and then take your stack of next action cards and then match them with your project. And then you will quickly see which project is missing an action. Yeah. And then if you look closely, you can see there's different paper clips and pins on some of those cards. And that is because I have 3 examples of 3 types of next actions that are not represented by a card. So I needed a placeholder for it. Later, I upgraded with some placeholder cards, and you can see them here, because sometimes I would have a next action in my mail, and sometimes I would have an appointment, which was my next action in my calendar, and also I could have a waiting mail, which was also the next action. So these 3 was not represented in my stack of paper because they were handled in Outlook anyway. Yeah. So then I just put one of those cards on my project to indicate that it had a next action. Yeah. So this was a very fun exercise to play with my system and a very analog way of doing it. It is really a revealing experience to put all your actions, all your projects out on one table so you can see it all. And it makes you reflect if you really have the resources to move on all these different projects. So it gave me a whole new perspective on this methodology to try it out.
Yeah. For me, the disadvantage was that I didn't have a table big enough, so, so I had to use the floor.
Yeah.
So it maybe
and
says
also,
too much about my system than, or too much.
One of the big issues is, even though it is portable when you only take one context with it, I was always bringing this box with my paper. I was bringing this back and forth to work every day.
Yeah.
But it was the nicest feeling was just to have the box open, and just when somebody asked something, I could just do like this in the papers and find whatever I needed, like in 2 seconds or something. It was really nice. So
there's something about the tactileness of the system. It's very calming for your brain to know that all I need to know is in this small box. So
exactly. Yeah. So it was a very nice experience to do, and of course there was also a reason why I stopped doing it, because as I was erasing all my cards, I felt I was losing some of my history, and that was probably also why you kept your cards. But I actually liked the continuity of like creating a story for the journey. Right here, it's like in the fairy tale where the children are putting out small pieces of stone when they go out in the woods to find their way back home, or they are putting out breadcrumbs, which the birds are eating. So when you archived your notes, you put out the stones, you lay the stones on the ground so you could find your way back in history. And I was putting out breadcrumbs, which was erased every week or eaten by the birds. So the next thing I went on to after this was actually I went back to square one, actually, with the book, and because it still gave me a lot of the tactile feeling, and now I can also use a fountain pen, which is also a nice experience, and I cannot do that on the index cards if I want to reuse them. So now
not if you want to reuse them. No.
So this was the next thing, and also doing the calendar drawing out the calendar each week in this one, and I did it mainly this is like an example of a 1 week calendar. I did it mainly to force myself to use enough time to reflect on my calendar, because normally in my weekly review, when I was just looking at my digital calendar, I have a family calendar, which is an Apple, and then the work calendar, which is an Outlook. I always had to look through two places, because I haven't found out to make it work to look at it all at the same. But what I was experiencing, I was not using enough time reflecting on my calendar. I'm doing that now because I have to draw it out each week, and I can merge the two calendars.
Yeah, and that the calendar part there is one of my real pet peeves. It's so annoying that we are in 2023 and it's still very hard to sync calendars and see several calendars in one view. I've tried it several times. I've even asked experts both at the job and professionally, and checked on the internet. And even though you jump through all the hoops and do all the things you're supposed to do, it still doesn't work. And it's so insanely annoying. So I'm not sure what are you supposed to do with these calendars. So it's I have the exact same experience. I have a family calendar in Google, and I have an Outlook calendar, and it works. Since it works 95% of the time, it works so often that you're bound to miss something.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a little annoying. Yeah.
But to wrap up the main topic for today, it was a very fun journey, and I will always recommend to experiment with new formats, even though you might think that GTD is only living in big pieces of paper or only digital. There are some few other ways to do it as well. So for me, it was just important to stay curious.
Yeah. At the moment, I'm using Microsoft To Do and capturing all my stuff there, but there is some part of me that really wants to go back to paper. And I think I also learned a lot about which categories are needed and which are really, because it's so easy to see it in your box. You can see that, okay, I made a category here, but it has just one card. Could it really maybe just go another place? Or I have one category here which is 5 centimeters wide. Maybe I should split it up a little, because there's obviously too much, or I'm not doing enough of this category. So
another argument, like digital versus paper notes, many people are always asking, but what if you lose your papers? Then it's gone forever. I would actually say the opposite, because in the digital world, it's so easy to make a folder or a category that you forget about, because it's not in your face. You have to pull it out to get it. In the paper world here, it's all together and you see it always. Of course, I can lose my box, but when I have it, it's more visible and it's more in my face than on a screen where I have to open an app or something to see my lists. So in that regard, it's easier to. It's closer to me than a digital app.
Yeah, knock on wood, I have never experienced a fire and lost everything, and I hope I'll never do. And I had my GTD system in my notebook several years ago, and I actually managed to lose it, or I left it on my hotel room. But they were actually nice enough to mail it back to me, so I added several very good reviews to that hotel, because they actually deserved it. So yeah.
So should we move on to our book recommendation?
Yes, I've been reading George Monbiot's excellent book called Regenesis, and even as a vegan, I am always shocked about the numbers for CO2 emissions and so on. And he had some very surprising numbers, and he said that if you want to stay below, not 1.5, which he said, you can just forget 1.5. We are talking about less than 2 degrees. And if not everybody on Earth stops eating meat, then we will pass 2 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. That's supposing we would stop doing everything else, but just continuing to eat the amount of meat we do today would ruin the whole calculation. So we are standing in front of pretty big changes if we are supposed to turn around on time. So yes. Did you have a book?
Yes, I'm currently reading this one. It's called Thanks for the Feedback. And it's not about so much giving feedback, but it's more like, how can I use feedback from my environment to be a better person? And of course, there is some truth in when you receive a feedback or a comment from a person you don't like, you have a tendency to disregard the feedback because you don't like the person. But oftentimes it shows that they are right. They're often right in some way. So even though you receive bad feedback, or it's given to you in a bad way, or it's by a person you don't like, or another thing about the feedback that you don't like, there's often potential for you to grow personally, and that is what this is about. It's very interesting. So that is what I'm reading right now.
Yes. Then I'll cite the quote. It's from Albert Einstein, and he said, "Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new." So I hope that makes an inspiration for everyone listening, that try something new. And maybe make some mistakes. That's the way we learn. So
Exactly. So next time, Kenneth, you will be talking about how to set up your calendar for less friction and stress.
Yeah, as we already talked a little about just now, how hard it could be, but there are also other things with your calendar that could be a problem in your workday. So that's we're thinking that's maybe a low-hanging fruit for most of our listeners and also for ourselves, and also just putting these thoughts out there, getting feedback on it. If you have any feedback for us for the last episode or this one or any future ones, please let us know. It's how we all learn, and maybe you vehemently disagree with what we said, but that's good. We appreciate the feedback. So already got some good feedback from several people who have listened to us now, and we will always appreciate more feedback. So with that, I'll take us out. Thanks for listening. We would love to hear from you. Give us feedback if you want in the comments for any ideas, tips, tricks, topics, or other things you recommend us to look into and possibly discuss in a future episode. Until next time, remember, be curious, attentive, and kind. Goodbye.